This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Coming up on this week's programme, huge crowds gathered last weekend in central Nicosia to demonstrate against fascism and racism.
It's very important how the staff, the teachers handle these cases, and as far as I know, the majority of the teachers, they are racist themselves. So they think that the immigrants should not be in public schools in Cyprus.
And it's a while now since single-use plastic straws have been banned, but are the paper ones any better?
It is quite alarming when you read that in order to make sure that they can continue to use single-use paper straws, for instance, that they're actually using chemicals that could be harmful towards human consumption.
Last weekend, in response to the pogroms in Limassol and Chloraka near Paphos recently, huge numbers of people gathered in the centre of Nicosia in an anti-fascist demonstration. I went down there with my camera and photographed the march and talked to some of the people there. So the crowds are gathering in the central square in Nicosia for an anti-fascist march after the pogroms that we saw in Limassol and Paphos in recent weeks. A very mixed bag of people. And the people who plan to walk to the Interior Ministry are pretty well outnumbered, or almost, by the police presence.
What's up?
So they're getting ready to start the march. All the police have got gas masks with them, riot shields, but I find it very difficult to think that most of the people gathered here to walk to the Interior Ministry are likely to cause any trouble whatsoever. There are kids, there are disabled people, there are people with their pets. Peace in our communities, a war on fascism is what that banner reads.
Hi, Rosie. No, this one's better. Oh, wait. It's double-sided. Hello.
Can you tell me a little bit about why you're here as a teacher? And I want to know what you think about the way we teach our children from an early age in our schools about the biodiversity we need in our communities.
First of all, I have to say, most probably you know this, that the Republic of Cyprus is bilingual state. I mean, so diversity is, we teach diversity at school, it's in the syllabus and so on. But in reality, nowadays, having a lot of immigrants in the schools, refugees and etc. Okay, I work in primary school, so you don't see conflicts and you don't see these things. But I mean, in high schools, I know that there are problems between the kids, and of course, it's very important how the staff, the teachers handle these cases. And as far as I know, the majority of the teachers, they are racist themselves. So they think that the immigrants should not be in public schools in Cyprus. I mean,
This doesn't teach our kids how to be global citizens, does it?
of course not. But I'm telling you, in primary schools, you don't. Okay, things are moving well. I mean, you don't have any. But in high schools, you do have problems between the kids. It's like ghetto. They are separated, immigrants on their own, the Greek Cypriots. Even if you have Turkish Cypriots, they are on their own. You don't,
There's no integration.
We don't say this. We think that they are integrated and things are going on well. But me, first of all, I have a big problem with my colleagues. I mean, they don't understand. For example, the fact that I'm here, I was telling them on Friday that I will take part in this. Why? What for? It's okay. I mean, so, you understand.
Can it be changed? Can we start teaching citizenship classes to primary school and they won't be so liable to accept the sort of things you're saying now in secondary school?
I think we have in secondary school a subject like citizenship, citizen something. I'm not very sure.
It's too late then, though, if they've already been through and been taught the things that they have.
Exactly. Of course, there's a lot of things that should change in the syllabus, in the methods, in a lot of things.
Well, the police are getting ready and they're going to start the march. At the moment they're chanting, "Power to the people, no one is illegal." And that refers to the tendency of the media here in particular to call migrants and asylum seekers illegal people.
They're shouting, not in Nicosia, not anywhere will they allow fascism to flourish.
Well, that's interesting. Approaching from the road down there is the water cannon, which was of course responsible for a serious injury to a young demonstrator a couple of years ago. The police presence is indeed very visible, and one can't help wondering whether or not so many police are there because they have intelligence that possibly counter-demonstrators may come and cause trouble, or is this just the police realising that they need to protect people when they exercise their right to demonstrate?
numbers, it's got to be a couple of thousand, I would think. So the main march has passed down past the Finance Ministry. On the left is the Interior Ministry, and they're going to swing round to take
welcome here. Say loud, say clear. Immigrants are welcome here. Say loud, say clear. Immigrants are welcome here. Say loud, say clear.
and again why such a heavy police presence, and the water cannon is out. Suggests either the police know something we don't, or perhaps they're just all getting extra overtime pay.
Clips from last weekend's anti-fascist demonstration held in the centre of Nicosia. Fortunately, it passed without incident, and a lot of citizens raised their voices against what's been happening recently in Cyprus.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
The biggest achievement of Crime Stoppers has been the ability of the public to be able to give information about crime anonymously.
There's no way I could have kept prostituting without the drugs. There's no way I could have had my body used like a public toilet, because that's actually what prostitution is.
And then the fourth series I started 3 days after I'd won the Oscar, so the whole of the Monarch of the Glen experience was all interplatted with the Gosford Park Oscar experience.
I was working with Ronnie James Dio, and David was going to reform Whitesnake in 2003.
Cyprus was chosen because Cyprus is a stable, peaceful and secure place.
We have to really look closely. What are we doing with children? What are we doing with adolescents? And what are we doing with adults that can help them move into a more literate situation?
The ones that I'm proudest of are the ones that were true discoveries, where we found something we didn't know existed.
It's almost a year since plastic straws were banned in Cyprus. Single-use plastic, of course, coming under attack across the European Union. It's amazing to me that there are still apparently quite a lot of single-use plastic straws in use, but a lot of people have swapped to paper straws. The new evidence from Brussels suggests that they are laced with chemicals. Joining us to discuss the issue from the Greens Party in Cyprus is Effie Xanthou. Effie, well, first of all, let's talk about the number of plastic straws that are still circulating. I'm amazed. It's nearly a year, and they surely should have used up whatever they had in stock by now.
Well, it seems that there were a lot of enterprises that were stockpiling. So our government has decided that they will turn a blind eye, as far as we can understand at least. They're going to turn a blind eye until the summer season is over this year as well, and really make sure that the regulation is enforced with, the next year or something, which is very usual, unfortunately, in Cyprus. We have been noting a lot of areas, a lot of restaurants that are still using the plastic straws, but one way or another, they have to stop using them. So it's just a matter of time before we can mobilize the regular authorities.
Do we know whether they are, in fact, still purchasing plastic straws? I mean, is there any check on that?
Well, officially they're not, and there aren't any imports, at least through official channels, of plastic straws, because they're not allowed to import them. So if they are still buying, then we're talking not only about illegal import and illegal purchase, but also about a huge fine that they have to pay. So there was really big stockpiling at the time. We were hearing numbers being imported by importers of various one-use plastics, like extraordinary amounts compared to what they usually would have imported for each season. So I'm not saying that it's correct. I mean, you voted in a law. We were quite late in voting in the law, and they're turning a blind eye towards illegal use of these single-use plastics. But it is what it is.
Now let's come to their replacement and those paper straws. I know that a lot of people said, they go soggy and they get bendy and all the rest of it. But in actual fact, they don't all, do they? Some of the ones I've come across are quite stiff. And I think those are the ones that have been treated with these chemical substances known as PFAs.
Well, that's the whole thing. The idea of not using single-use plastic is not for something else to replace them that is single-use. The idea is for all of us to start using something that will be durable, like, for instance, stainless steel straws, or plastic that can be reused and reused. I have seen silicone straws that are actually free of PBDs. I've seen other use of plastic that is quite sturdy and can be reused many, many times. And that was the idea behind stopping one-use plastic. It wasn't turning towards one-use paper or one-use, I've seen straws, like from actual biological material. The whole idea is to turn away from the kind of culture that says that you use something once and then you throw it away because of the time, effort, and energy that is needed to create any single use material that we're going to be using. But it is quite alarming when you read that in order to make sure that they can continue to use single-use paper straws, for instance, that they're actually using chemicals that could be harmful towards human consumption. I do need to remind people that in general, having too many chemicals in our waste is harmful for the environment as well. But it seems that the study that came out from Brussels shows that it's actually harmful for people also.
So you can absorb these PFAs if you use these straws?
Well, that's the thing. We don't know. The study hasn't concluded whether these are chemicals that remain in the body or are flushed out. But in general, I'll remind people of the directive, the REACH directive. It's been already 15 years, if I'm not mistaken, that it has been imposed within the EU. And the whole idea behind it is to reduce the use of chemicals in general in our lives, because there are so many chemicals being used in everyday situations that we have, that it seems that a lot of compounds are being accumulated within our bodies. They're not all being flushed out. We have deposits of chemicals in our internal organs that are never going to be flushed out, which could possibly lead to other health complications, besides the ones that have been identified as probably being carcinogenic or definitely being carcinogenic. So in general, we should be trying to reduce as much exposure as we have and as much consumption as we have of these chemicals that are being utilized in our everyday lives.
Well, and we shouldn't forget, should we, that a lot of these, even if they are flushed out of the body, they're flushed down toilets and things into our water systems.
Yes, and they do return to the environment and they do return into our food chain. That's the whole idea of trying to reduce the chemicals that are being manufactured to be able to correspond to one-use needs or very reduced-used needs, if I can call them like that.
If we look at the other single-use things that were banned, are they doing any better?
Well, no. Well, let's consider plastic spoons and knives and forks. It seems that a lot of them have been replaced with wooden ones. Actually, I mean, if wood that is supposed to be ecologically harvested, as it's called, it's a bit better. But it also means that you have the use of trees or bamboo for something that, again, is only for single use, and then you're tossing them out again. Wouldn't it be easier if we all just carried our own cutlery, or if we were using things that could be rewashed and then reused again? I mean, it's not difficult. I've been doing it for years now. I have my own, knife and fork, and to be honest with you, it's much better, actually, because I am sick and tired of trying to cut my food with either, before it was with the plastic fork, the knives that used to break, and now it's with a wooden knife that definitely doesn't cut anything. So it's much easier to have your own knife and fork in a small bag in your usual bag, and it's fine. I bring it home, I put it in the washing machine with everything else. The next day I have my new batch. And that's what I do with my stainless steel straw, and that's what I do with my cup. I have a coffee cup that I take around with me, and I refuse to use single-use coffee cups. It's not about replacing plastic with paper. It's not about replacing plastic with wood or other organic material because they are eventually going to be composted. We need to start thinking about the energy wasted on so many things manufactured and shipped all over the world from the other side of the continent or of the globe, and then having to be like in the store for you to reach.
Well, you use them. I have my straw in my handbag, and anybody who comes and has a frappe at my house gets a stainless steel straw. But it doesn't seem to be a message that's getting across to the majority of people in Cyprus.
Well, if I had to put my finger on it, I think that one of the biggest backlashes that we had towards this policy had to do with coronavirus and the craziness of using single-use everything because of the possibility of transmission. I mean, we used to go to cafes and they would serve us in a porcelain mug, and it would be very nice, and it would actually keep the temperature better than the one-use plastic or one-use paper plastic that they're serving us now. I mean, how can you really enjoy your Cypriot coffee if it's being handed over in that itty-bitty paper plastic thingy? It's not the same taste, and it's not the same feeling that you have when you drink it. But it seems that a lot of businesses have decided that they'd rather continue to use one-use plastic instead of just using something that they will then have to clean and reuse. I really wish that they would see the cost as not only the cost of buying a cup or washing the cup or replacing it if it gets broken, but also the cost that that has on our environment. And I think that there are many things in our lives that we stopped thinking of the ultimate cost of using them. I mean, that was the logic behind stopping the use of the single plastic bag. And it just seems that we just upgraded the plastic bags into something that is a thicker plastic. That's, yes, you can reuse it, but most people don't reuse those bags. They just take them home and toss them away. Not even in recycling. They just toss them in the regular bin. So yes, there is a problem in people realizing the mentality and the shift that we need to have. We have to start making the direct connection that you have with extreme weather events and problems that we are having with the hiking in prices, for instance, for our electricity, with the fact that we insist on using single-use a lot of things in our lives.
Do you see hope at the end of the tunnel?
Oh, definitely. Things have been changing, and if we were having this discussion 20 years ago, it would go into the conspiracy theory box for most people that were listening to it. I have the impression that change is coming. It's slower. It takes more time. And I have to say that I am quite surprised when I see the vehemence with which people are refusing to use that they insist on using the single-use plastics. Like, I remember a year ago, people were posting that they were prepared to pay any price to get another bag of plastic straws to have in their house. I mean, that was a peak, and then it was over. And people are quite used to using whatever it is that is being handed to them at the cafes. So now it's time for the next shift. Each of us having their own cutlery and their own straws and their own in their own glasses, so that we can get over this. And finally, getting some quality back into our cafes and restaurants and stopping the use of single-use plastic.
That is Effie Xanthu from the Green Party, talking there about that rather worrying research that's come out of Brussels, saying that PFAs are found in most paper straws, and we are probably ingesting them, and then we're not quite sure whether they stay with us or they end up in the sewage and then our water supply. Effie, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
We've spoken before on the programme about the lack of infrastructure for our rapidly expanding population. We're giving encouragement to people from abroad to move to Cyprus, either to invest or to study, and there isn't the housing to go around. That's something that came up earlier this week in Parliament when they were discussing the need to provide better and more affordable housing. Meanwhile, also midweek, the President had a meeting with the Ministers of Education, Finance, Interior and Labour to discuss how they could push Cyprus to become a centre of tertiary education. Now, the problem is that in many areas where there are already universities and further education facilities, there isn't enough housing for the students who want to study there. So they're also looking at making public transport more accessible and thinking of moving students from one district to another to their studies. It all sounds a little bit improbable unless they put in place the other infrastructure that's also needed. It isn't just housing, it's water supply, sewage systems, and many other aspects of increasing your population without having the infrastructure in place. The head of the relevant parliamentary committee, Pavlos Milonas, told his fellow MPs that about 70% of students use private cars and that we needed to cultivate public transport. At the ministerial meeting at the Presidential Palace, the Education Minister said that they needed to take concrete measures to help upgrade higher education in Cyprus. And she said these should be multi-layered to concern issues of incentives, housing, and linking tertiary education programmes with the labour market. Now, incentives to study in Cyprus are set to be offered to both local and international students, and they will likely cost quite a bit of money, similar to the €326,000 in scholarships recently announced by the Cyprus University of Technology, DEPAC, in Limassol, and their offer of bringing students from Africa here on scholarships received some very unsavoury feedback on social media. Typical comments were, "Why don't you give Cypriot students these scholarships? Why should we give them to people who are abroad?" And there will be further drains on government finances if some of the MP's suggestions are taken into consideration. Some of them suggested that public transportation fees should be covered for students, and discounted electricity bills should also be considered. The ministers are set to meet again in October with their concrete proposals. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.